Welcome to this launch briefing for the Music Hub Performance Framework. I'm Sam Martin, Senior Manager, Music Hubs, and I'm joined by my colleague, Fran.
Hello, I'm Fran Matthews, Senior Officer for Music Hubs.
I'm also joined by members of the Performance Framework Working Group, who I'll ask to introduce themselves now.
Alison Brain, Head of Music Service and Music Hub for Norfolk County Council, the Hub Lead Organisation for Norfolk and Suffolk Music Hub.
I'm Paul Gaino. I'm the Director of Buckinghamshire Music Trust, and we are the Hub Lead Organisation for the Buckinghamshire and Oxfordshire Music Hub.
I'm Peter Smalley, and I am the Chief Executive for NMPAT, which is the Hub Lead Organisation for Northamptonshire and Rutland.
Thank you. This recording is being interpreted for British Sign Language by Alice Taverner, Claire Dodds, Paul Hollingdrake, and Tom Mould. In this briefing, we'll introduce the refreshed performance framework for Music Hubs, alongside Hub representatives in the working group, who will share insights into the work they've undertaken. We'll highlight the key differences between this refreshed version of the framework and the previous version, and we'll share how you can get started with using the framework and the support and peer learning that will be in place later this year. This briefing has been recorded so that you can come to it in your own time, and captions are available if you'd like to use them. Copies of the slides used in the briefing are available on our website, along with all other information relating to the performance framework. Thank you to everyone who has been involved in shaping the framework, either through sharing your feedback with us during 2023-24, or as part of the working group co-designing the framework with us. So this is what we'll cover in this briefing. We'll summarise where we've come from and the work undertaken to refresh the performance framework before we talk about its aims and what we hope to achieve collectively with it. Then we'll focus on how to use the framework, the process you'll go through, who and what is involved, and what ratings to use. Following this, we'll explore the framework structure of criteria and performance areas before summarising what each performance area includes. And we'll finish by looking at what your next steps can be and what support there is available. Firstly, some background context. The first performance framework was launched and piloted during 2023-24. It grew out of a need to articulate clearly what was meant by performance, and for Hubs, the Arts Council, and the Department for Education to be able to understand better how the programme was performing. It aligned with the refreshed National Plan for Music Education, which also came into effect at the same time. Early in 2024, we used surveys to gather feedback from Hubs using the framework and also from our relationship managers. Then, after an open call, we implemented a working group in March that year, which includes 7 Hub representatives. With this group, we discussed the key benefits and issues of the framework as it stood, drawing on feedback from the surveys and perspectives from our conversations with Hub leaders from across the network. The working group has reviewed and updated all aspects of the framework, working through a co-design process to refresh the criteria, ratings and process to respond to the feedback we'd received. Moving forward, we are looking to refresh the framework every 2 years to ensure it can remain a useful tool and reflect latest thinking. The aims of the framework are set out within the framework document, and these are to provide a constructive self-evaluation tool for identifying and reflecting on strengths and areas for development across the whole hub partnership, inform continuous improvement and objective setting for hubs, support greater sharing of good practice and peer-to-peer support across the hub network, provide a clear, transparent articulation of the expectations of all hubs, enable a greater shared understanding of the performance of hubs between hub lead organisations, hub partners, hub boards, the Arts Council, the Department for Education and other stakeholders, and to enable hubs and the Arts Council to demonstrate and advocate for the impact of the hub programme and articulate hubs' individual and collective strengths across the country. The refreshed framework aims to address the feedback received via the surveys and the working group. This table sets out key points from that feedback and what's been updated in the framework. It's worth remembering that overall there was a positive response on the idea and need to have a performance framework and to clearly and consistently articulate expectations around performance. On structure and design, there were concerns on the overlap between performance areas. Progression, for example, didn't work as a separate area, as it's an embedded part of high quality provision, and the same for inclusion. Some criteria didn't quite fit or blurred the line between funding requirements and performance. For example, the need for an inclusion lead. The criteria and performance areas we have now are more clearly defined and articulated through a set of 22 individual criteria divided across 9 performance areas. The word ratings we used previously, which were developing, emerging, engaging, and stretching, were felt to be too limiting, and the ratings weren't easily or consistently understood. Stretching criteria weren't robust enough and often reflected pockets of strong practice that weren't necessarily consistent. We want to ensure we can capture exemplary or innovative practice, which we'll continue to do with this framework. To address feedback on ratings, we have moved to a 5-point numeric scale and set out a best fit approach. We also needed to think about the process. This framework wasn't intended to add substantially to hub lead organisation or relationship manager workload. Instead, we wanted it to align to existing processes of self-evaluation and review. In some places it did, but in others it added significant burden. In part so that the RM had the evidence they needed to know if a rating was correct, and elsewhere it was needed if a hub's LPME and wider reporting was not sufficient. The new process keeps in mind that hubs themselves are the experts on their work. The process is more collaborative, led by the hub lead organisation with involvement from the relationship and development manager, hub partnership and hub board in discussions on performance, reaching a shared understanding prior to submission. Ratings will be submitted annually in September and won't need to be updated throughout the year. And we've made clearer the alignment with hub's wider cycle of work, for example, how it can inform objectives and forward planning, and the intersection with the Arts Council's risk assessment. The other feedback on the pilot framework was lack of consistency in approach. Feedback indicated there was inconsistent interpretation of some wording within criteria and varying degrees of understanding. For example, what is a comprehensive approach to needs analysis, or what is being considered when we say inclusion. This led to variability, which weakened usefulness of the framework. With the working group, refreshing the framework has been an opportunity to ensure criteria are as clear and concise as possible. We've been mindful of language, and in addition, there will be more opportunities for conversation and support to help reach a consistent understanding. The working group will regularly review and refresh the framework and take on board any ongoing feedback and ensure the criteria are as clear as they can be. And finally, we also heard about hub board understanding of performance. Although there were limited responses to our survey, there was a sense that chairs and board members also need to build understanding of what good performance looks like, what the criteria are, and what performance looks like across the country. Hub chairs will be featured within our ongoing support offer as well.
I think the key aims of this iteration of the framework are being entirely focused on self-evaluation and therefore being a collaborative, active and useful document to inform development within hubs. It's genuinely something that's intended to be used for self-evaluation in a reflective way, to look at the strengths and look at the areas for development within a hub area. In that way, it becomes a document which is owned by the hub lead organisation and forms something that can drive conversations with the hub board and with the relationship manager.
Sense of ownership was something which came across very strongly through the process. This is a process which is going to be owned and driven by the hub lead organisations, and it is a self-evaluation tool. It is about power to the hub leaders rather than power over the hub leaders. And it genuinely should be a document which hub lead organisations can use to talk to their partners, to talk to their boards, to talk to their schools about what is working well and what needs to develop and change. And that change of emphasis was particularly refreshing as we approach the second iteration of the performance framework.
I think the aim of the framework really is to provide a kind of clearer, structured approach to evaluating and also then improving the work of our hubs, essentially. It's not really just about measuring success for me, it's about supporting that continuous development, ensuring that every single aspect of our work is extremely high quality, inclusive, but also has that impact at the heart of everything that we're doing. It's encouraging us, certainly, to take a more holistic view, not just looking at what we deliver, but actually how we are delivering that, who we're reaching, and then the strength of the partnerships that sit within the work that we do. I think by embedding the framework into our planning and also our practice, we can then ensure that all music education is remaining relevant for our young people, and then we're able to create meaningful opportunities, which I think is at the heart of everything that we're trying to achieve as hubs nationally.
And I'd just add, Alison, that I think it will really help our boards and people who are not necessarily close to what's happening on the ground genuinely understand where we are and be able to give that clear articulation of their expectations within a hub, using what comes out of the framework in a positive way.
And I think also there, Paul, crucially, it's recognising the role of hubs in actually shaping that wider musical landscape, so not just locally and regionally, but also that national picture as well.